Hi, everyone. I am Kelly, and this is Uncorked History, coming to you on a day that history was made. We had a Supreme Court nominee who was voted in, I don't know, whatever the term is, confirmed by the Senate. So, woohoo! All right. And I'm going to turn it over now to Jamie to introduce our guests. Hi, Jamie.
Today is also special. It is National Beer Day here in the United States. Apparently originally celebrated in the 90s in Virginia, and it slowly spread. So yes. But we are joined by two very amazing scholars tonight. We have, is it Tanya?
You got it, yes.
I was so afraid. I was like, I'm going to get it wrong. We have Dr. Tanya Roth, who wrote this fabulous book, which you can see in the background, Her Cold War, and I can't wait to talk about it. And then Dr. Rebecca Graham, who is it Frances Perkins that you're working on, the book?
Yes, well, since, being non-tenure track, don't have to just work on one thing at the same time. So my book project is Frances Perkins, but I'm also doing research relating to postal history from my dissertation.
Oh, this is going to be so fun. It's going to be so fun. So what is everybody drinking?
Not beer. Sorry, National Beer Day.
I made decaf green tea. I let it seep instead of being impatient like usual. It's really good. I told my husband Brandon that I was making it because they always ask us what we drink at the beginning. He's like, yeah, I don't think that's like what they do about it, but I'm really enjoying the tea.
Tea is good.
Amaretto Sour. I'm not sure about my ratio, but I just measured with my heart and all that was left in the sweet and sour mix. So it was great. I have to not wait, shopping list. Sorry, I have to add this. We're going to be in big trouble.
Excellent. I am drinking some sort of peach wine cocktail that they were selling at Trader Joe's that looked good. It's Simpler brand wines. It's pretty good.
Interesting. I am celebrating National Beer Day.
Woohoo!
An Elysian Space Dust IPA, and it's 8.2% alcohol by volume. So we'll see where the night takes us.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. So let's talk some history. I think it's interesting that you're both teachers at Rebecca, I believe you do some adjuncting at the college level, but also teach high school. And Tanya, remind us what ages you teach.
High school and also middle school this year, which is an adventure that will not be repeated. I'm happy to talk about it. It's been great. If anybody from work sees this, it's been good. They haven't fired me on that yet. So.
Excellent. So we'd like to start by asking a little bit sort of how you got into both history as a field of study, but also like your particular subject area and what drew you to that. So either of you, whoever wants to talk.
Go for it.
All right. Oh gosh. I always liked history, and I don't know whether it's my parents dragging me across the country to historic sites as a kid, or my classic, like everybody, I'm sure Rebecca would also probably say something about this, American Girl books, 8 years old. But I was going to just be an English major and then become an English professor. But as an undergrad, they said, well, if you want to, the other backup to that, my parents went to grad school when I was in kindergarten. I thought everyone wrote a thesis and got a master's degree. It was just what I believed the way the world worked. They never pressured me. My parents would have been happy if I dropped out of high school and, not high school, but they don't care. I wanted to write a thesis, and my undergrad said, you can write a thesis, but your GPA isn't good enough for English. You can do history, it's your other major, that's fine. And I took a course on gender in World War I. I had never studied gender, never studied World War I. First day of the class, the teacher's like, so what do you all want to research? I went, this book about nurses could be interesting. So I just kind of fell into it and then couldn't let it go. I had this grand plan that included having a family and 20 years later going to graduate school for PhD after my children were raised. And after 2 years working, I was like, yeah, no, I'm going to grad school. I couldn't let go of women in war, and I just kept going from there.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun.
I, like you, am also team always loved history. I actually did not read the American Girl books as a kid. I'm more interested in them now. Um, I only read nonfiction as a kid, and I still read disproportionately nonfiction, but I swear to goodness, my sixth grade reading teacher would not let me read another biography. Like anyone else got to pick whatever genre, but he was like, here's this thing called fiction, please try it. And I do read widely now, but let's see, I had like historical figurines as a kid from like museum gift shops. This is definitely the uncorked version, isn't it? I had like presidential trivia flashcards. Like I was just, I was always as into history as I am now, but now I have a PhD and I'm a high school history teacher. So it like comes across as more expected than when I was a child. Also, my parents did a great job at taking me to lots of historic sites. I came into college as a history major. I thought I was going to do an education minor, quickly declared a double major in philosophy. Then once becoming a philosophy major, the stereotypical unemployable major, I was like, okay, humanities grad school it is. And it sounds like we had different journeys to get there after college because I went straight through. Like this year right now is my first time not being a student, like since kindergarten.
I don't know anything about those unemployable majors. My major in college was religious studies, and my husband's was philosophy.
Must have great conversation.
We do. And we are both gainfully employed at jobs that have nothing to do with our majors.
Sorry, my dog's just like totally threw me off. It was a fart. It was terrible. So, all right. So thinking about, you both teach at the sort of non-collegiate level, although you do adjunct, Rebecca. What is it like in that sphere, kind of compared to your experiences in academia at the collegiate level? Like, I imagine there's a lot of crossover in terms of like pedagogical ideas and materials, but I also imagine you have to cater quite a bit differently in terms of how students are able to process the things that you teach them. So I'd love to know more.
I haven't started. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I haven't taught college in so long, and I think you've been doing it more recently, so you might have fresher perspective.
Oh, well, I start my first class as an adjunct this summer and then another one in the fall at AU. So I haven't taught my own college class yet. I was a TA for 8 consecutive semesters, which is unusual. Most people research at some point or like take a semester to do, I don't know, their own research. I TA'd for 8 consecutive semesters. I thought I wanted to go into museums because my master's is in public history. I mean, I might still want to do some museum work, but thought I wanted to go into museums. So it was weird. Why was I like TAing all the time? I just loved teaching. But that, as the cliche goes, just love teaching. But back to the original question about like how they're the same or different, I had this weird experience where my first like spring as a high school teacher, because I started in the middle of the year, it was also my last semester as a TA, and I had an evening class. So that meant I was teaching 2 high school classes during the day, and then metroing across the greater DC area to AU to lead a discussion. And the skills are absolutely transferable. I think it totally depends on the student population. Like Madeira, where I'm a teacher, is much more like Mount Holyoke College, the women's college where I attended college. I would even say that Mount Holyoke in many ways is more like Madeira than like AU, because AU is co-ed and sometimes they're there to get credit. Whereas like a privilege of working at Madeira is it's a prep school and the girls come to class ready to learn. Like you have to do the work to like teach understanding, but they come ready to learn. Whereas when I was TAing, at least sometimes you had to do a little bit of work to make them want to be there.
Yeah, I TA'd most of, not all the way through. We had, our program was start TAing in the second year, go through the sixth year, but I had a fellowship in the last year. So, and I think my second year, I ended up doing a special technology thing instead for a while. So I just discovered I loved the teaching part, right? It was so much fun. But the only course I got to teach on my own at the college level was a summer course right after I graduated, and I was already moving into my class at MICDS the following fall. But it's unlike Madeira, it's co-ed, but it's also prep school. It's a little larger, I think, because it's also not a boarding school. It's Madeira is a boarding school, right?
Yeah, it's boarding day. It's about 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard great things about it. It just seems like such a cool environment. But yeah, I found, like, for me, one of the things that always sticks out is, in part, the ability to have these longer relationships with kids, because I teach 9th and 10th grade right now. I came in teaching 11th and 12th, and the thought of teaching 9th grade terrified me because I really wanted something closer to what I was used to. So I taught English and history my first year. I had seniors, I had juniors, and then they kind of slowly edged me down. And my first department chair said, I think everyone should teach 9th grade at some point. I thought, please no, please no. But 9th grade is one of my favorites, and 10th grade is kind of my sweet spot these days. And it's so much fun. But what really for me is huge is the relationship building. I have students that I've taught for 2 years, and then some of them join my mock trial team. So I have a junior who I've been really close to for 3 years now. And so even if they leave my classroom, we're still connecting in other ways and getting to have that. And to me, that was like, oh, I'm not just going to see you for a semester and you're going to go on to something else. I know you can have those relationships at college, but to me, that's been a big part, that ability to have those connections. But yeah, I think this is definitely a high achieving crowd, so we can do a whole lot of things, but there's still a lot of times like, oh, you've never heard about X, have you? We should talk about this. And sometimes I admit there are moments that it's hard to remember, wait, what do you know, what you don't know? Because they'll know a surprising amount of stuff, but then there's basic stuff they don't know. And for example, we're doing civil rights right now because my 10th graders are an accelerated course that's essentially getting ready for the AP exam in 4 weeks, 3 weeks, sometime very soon. So I know that the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, when you see that on paper, you just read it as SNCC. And I had them doing group presentations, and every year I forget to tell them this because it's so ingrained in me. So my first class, they all kept reading it as SNCC. And I, at the end of class, said, oh, hey, I needed to tell you, it's pronounced SNCC. It's just the way it is. My second class comes in, and before they start, I said, you need to know this. It's pronounced SNCC. So second class remembered this, and we had a carryover presentation on Wednesday. They're good to go. My first class, the carryover presentation, John Lewis was part of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC. So things that, things like that, just have to work in. But there's also, they're so much fun. They're really lively and curious, and they ask questions that sometimes I think by college, either they don't want to come off like they don't know something, or they already know it, they just don't know well. So there's sometimes, I think, that sense of discovery, and my 9th graders are so much fun. So don't take my 9th graders from me,
Acronyms are really hard. I'm still like, I mean, I work for the Army. The Army is known for having millions of acronyms. I thought I knew a lot because my husband's been active duty for 11 years. No. Also, like, you spell out, you say DOD, but in terms of the SCIF, you call it the SCIF. Like, you just never know which one you're going to spell out, which one you're going to pronounce in a weird sort of way. And today I had to ask, I was like, what is CPC in relation to the Civil War? Because they kept saying, like, does this unit have Civil War CPC? And I'm like, I don't know. Apparently it has to do with like participation credit.
Interesting.
And I was like, oh, that makes sense.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting hearing you guys talk about TAing and thinking, oh, I love teaching. It probably feels natural to people who do love teaching that you'd even love TAing. I TA'd a lot in grad school, I think 7 or 8 quarters. I did not love teaching. And so I think that, you know, it's not a thing that all people enjoy. It's not a thing that all people are good at. And so it's so great that for both of you, you know that you love it and you're able to do it and to take that love of teaching into the classroom. Because it's not everybody.
I think, yeah.
No,
Just
go ahead.
I use cliches because I think some people say, quote, I love teaching, and what they mean is like, give me a teaching job. And that I've learned that it's important to show, not tell. And anyone can say, I love teaching. Although it sounds like you might not want to say that.
Luckily, I don't need to do that in my job, and it's okay for me to admit that, in fact, I don't. My husband, on the other hand, loves teaching, is wonderfully good at it. So, you know, it's a thing and it's a skill that you can see in people, but not one that is, I have lots of other skills. That is not one of them. But I want to ask about right now teaching history, teaching humanities in the kind of environment we're in. And I know that you're at schools that are, you know, not necessarily the kind of schools that are under attack by school boards and things like that. But what is it like to know that there is an environment in this country that is saying, like, there are things we shouldn't be teaching, there are things that shouldn't be in the classroom, and yet knowing that Gen Z is so curious and interested and wants to hear about things. So I wonder if you could sort of reflect on that weird dichotomy that's going on in this country.
A couple months ago, I had an 11th grader raise her hand on like the second to last day of that module and ask the question, will we get to have a critical race theory class like the public schools do? And I did quote this on Twitter, and people had a variety of responses, and I barely engaged because unless it's a direct quote, like, it's probably in my best interest not to. However, what was so interesting about that is, like, she happens to be an immigrant and she lives in Virginia and she goes to high school, and we had just finished learning about essentially Black history. It was the Race in America module, and this kid sees all this media around Virginia, like these teachers are just teaching critical race theory, and she wanted to make sure she was learning it too, and it was just such a precious question.
What's that? Wow. It's so interesting because I haven't ever had a kid directly ask me about it. I have a student that I used to teach who's a very active senior. He actually just wrote legislation to get an he just wrote legislation that's going through the Missouri Senate and House to get dedicated Holocaust teaching in the public schools. He's been getting student support at public and private schools. And he mentioned it today, not in the context of what we actually do. So I know our kids are aware of it. They just don't talk about it in the experiences that I've had. But we do have, for example, our 6th graders read Ibram Kendi's Stamped, the Young People's Version, and they've done that the last couple of years. Been a little pushback from a few parents because the parent population is diverse, but it still leans rather conservatively in St. Louis for that demographic that we serve. And I haven't seen any pushback in the upper school. I think it seems to be more 6th grade is a point where we still have, you know, their families may consider them still pretty young. I'm intending to use Clint Smith's How the Word Was Passed with my 10th graders this summer. I don't know if that might open up for some families a can of worms, because we're having conversations about, are there things in here that we need to be careful of, like discussions of Trump, for example. But it's such an important work that I think will be really great for my students to get that connection to the present. There are moments of tension around politics. I think there's, in my school at least, sort of a hesitancy among the kids to get into politics, kind of stemming all the way back to the 2016 election. But COVID's also complicated that. So I have a huge awareness of this because I know we can get pushback from parents. But my department chair, who incidentally I went to grad school with, she left the program and came to teach there ahead of me 3 years in advance. So she's amazing and she's so supportive and she knows what she's doing. So the administration is behind us. I think it's only a matter of time in the next year or two before a parent comes to the upper school and is like, you're teaching CRT. But I'm curious to see what happens, but I know I'm hyper aware of it and probably more aware than I need to be of it. It's not stopping me from doing anything, but just that awareness. And sometimes it gets a little uncomfortable. Like I'm very aware of if one student in the classroom pulling no leans a certain way says something about Trump versus I know there are students in the classroom who lean another way. And how do I react to that as a teacher? But it's also, I'm the faculty sponsor for Campus Democrats. So any student can find that information and see it and is probably going to guess where I am. Whereas at one point in time, it was like, oh, we don't, try to play devil's advocate. Sure, I could be Campus Democrat sponsor and not be a Democrat, but kids are not going to read that way. And the reality is I am. So it's just something that I'm kind of bracing for impact, but knowing that we've got the landing pads around us, I think. But as a white teacher as well, I think that's also giving me a little bit of privilege in that situation as well.
Yeah, when I was at teaching at the university level, unfortunately, my entire department, all 4 of us, were white individuals, and so I was asked to teach the African American history class, and I felt so, I don't want to say unqualified because I'd studied African American history extensively, but I just felt awkward in that the students who took the course did not perceive me in a way that spoke to kind of my level of expertise. And I get it too. Like it was brought to my mind today. I was thinking about it because we just finished, I adjunct for Southern New Hampshire, sometimes online. And one of the modules is about slavery in New England, because I teach the Colonial New England course. And of course, a lot of the students are like, what? Slavery in New England? No way. Yes way. But has anybody seen that there's a Rachel Dolezal documentary on Netflix?
Oh gosh, not surprised, but I haven't seen it.
Oh man, I watched it this afternoon. I will say, like, wow, but also like, it brings up a lot of really interesting questions about identity and race as a social construct and white privilege. And so there are really important questions in it. I just don't think. Also, Rachel Dolezal is no longer Rachel Dolezal. I believe she is, she has an African name now. Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah, like Nadeki or something like that. Yeah, if you look at it, it's a whole shitstorm of chaos. But I don't know where I was going with that, but it just made me think of it. Also, Brad, yes, it does sound about white. Thank you.
So we've talked a lot about your work. I want to talk to you about things that you both find fun. So I noticed, Rebecca, on your website, you actually have a section called hobbies, which I love. So I want to know sort of what both of you do kind of outside of the classroom. You know, teaching is as much as you love it is a high stress kind of job that I'm sure you need things in your life that are just like something else to sort of unwind. So what sorts of things are sort of the things you go to when you're not teaching?
You want to go first, Tanya?
Sure. I read a lot. I mean, I have Peloton, so the fitness angle has been a big one for me. Definitely reading. I mean, I exclusively read fiction after I started my job for a long time. A lot of TV. I remember in grad school feeling like everybody was much smarter than I, and they why was I the only one watching fun stuff on TV and I must be doing something wrong? And now I'm, meshing Twitter and other places where I'm like, oh, good, I did it right the whole time, right? We don't talk about that part because like I just binged Bridgerton last week and I binged Inventing Anna over break, and I'm making my way through the new season of Mrs. Maisel. I have a list of things. But honestly, my best friends at school are the librarians, and two of them this week were like, "We think you'd like this book." I'm like, "Yeah, I think you're right." So it's for me, it's like just throw me a new book and I will check it out, or turn on the TV, or spending time with my son who's almost 9. And we're gonna go see Mamma Mia at my school this weekend because musicals. He got to sit in on the auditions for it last December because I help out with that a little bit. He's like, "We have to see this show." I said, "Yes, we do." So things like that, like being able to just go take a walk, or ride the Peloton, or spend time, like just those random things. I feel like that's about it. And writing the book was definitely fun in its own way, right? Like, and now I don't have that. I'm like, well, what do I do? Because I don't do that right now.
I just want to say I totally get you on the watching things and feeling judged by my fellow PhD students. I felt so dumb. I felt like everybody was looking at me weird. I did get a lot of like, "Oh, you watched that? And you admit that you watched that?" Because I learned about Sex and the City while I was in my PhD program. And this was when Netflix was still doing, the discs in the mail. So tells you how long ago that was. But yeah, it just, I don't know. I watched The Hills, it's just fun.
It really is.
I also watched a lot of TV in grad school, but I also dropped out of the PhD program, so maybe that's not a good example. I watched The Nanny a lot of reruns of The Nanny. And by the way, Fran Drescher just made a guest appearance on Mr. Mayor, which I don't know if you're all watching Mr. Mayor. I believe I have recommended it before on this. She showed up and I was like, that's Fran Drescher. So yes, TV is good.
I mean, I'm thinking about, and Tanya sort of hinted at this, like the thin line between work and not work. So like I'll come back to there to back up for a second. So on my website, I list my hobbies as reading, music, and travel. To a large extent, they are. In my daily life, it's really reading, music, which is acoustic guitar, and running. I actually don't like running that much. It's just like the exercise that I don't hate as much. Anyway, complicated history with running, but not interesting. And then a lot of times when I am happiest is like reading and writing. And that is compatible with being like all for thinking through like class and labor lens and like don't exploit my labor and people should get to go home and do whatever they want at night. So that's something I definitely think about. And the reason that this related to the TV thing is my first couple years of grad school. I mean, I think most people watch a lot of TV. Like I definitely do. Before the pandemic, I just watched the same 2 shows repeatedly. And then during the pandemic, now I've seen all the rest of the shows because of lockdown. But one of my shows early in grad school was The West Wing. And I watched it over and over again. And then I got to TA a class about it with my advisor, Gautam Rao. So then suddenly West Wing is like not only what I did in my spare time, but the subject of the class I was TAing. And then when I get to my dissertation, my advisor would use West Wing references to like provide feedback sometimes. Like for example, if he was telling me, to take a break in between comps and the proposal, he would quote Jed Bartlett and be like, breaks are good, breaks over. Yeah, so, but that's something I think about a lot now, especially because, I mean, at work, I mean, last year I coached a couple sports and that wasn't a job requirement. It was like extra. And I play guitar for the Judaism at Madeira Club sometimes. So sometimes my like hobbies become part of my workspace. And then what do I enjoy doing over spring break? Well, writing my book proposal that I got an agent for was recharging for me, and it made me happy while I was doing it. So it's like navigating that, like, I never want to be one of those people that's like, if you love what you do, you never work. It's like, no, that's true. It's still labor. And also it's okay to be a nerd and love what you do. Like it sounds like everyone does on this call.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that's one of the sort of, I think, pitfalls of academia. So I work in academia still, but I'm on the administrative side now. And so it's not like I have the kind of job that you can just leave, like it follows me home and all of that. But my sort of nerdy pursuits now, and I certainly still have them, are wholly separate from my job. You know, work knows about them and all of that, but they are like, I don't get any sort of credit at work for running a history podcast, despite the fact that I work in a social sciences division. Like, you know, it's completely unrelated, and I think that's a really good thing for me. It's really healthy to sort of have that separation. Like in some ways it would be nice if, you know, I could spend some of my work time preparing for the podcast, things like that. But on the other hand, it's like, this is a thing that is just mine, that like I don't have to do for anybody else. And I can have that sort of separation, but still, you know, totally nerdy kind of hobbies.
2 years later, and I'm like, I have an 8-hour work day. And I don't know what to do with myself because I'm so used to being like staying up till 3 a.m. grading 150 papers and all of that stuff. And like being on a dozen committees, it's such a bizarre thing, but now I have to figure out what my hobbies are because I've never had time for them before. I do have a Peloton too. So we should be friends because I haven't been on it in a while.
We should be friends.
I need motivation.
I don't know if you're all watching Severance, which I think is on Apple TV. I don't know. I've got all the streaming. But it's a weird show, and I don't necessarily recommend it because it's bizarre. But the sort of basic conceit behind it is that people choose to work on the severed floor of this company. And what that means is that there's like a chip in their brain that separates out their work life and their home life. And when they get to work, they get in an elevator, and on the ride down the elevator, they forget everything about their home life and they are just work people. And then on the ride back up at the end of the day, they forget everything about work and they are just at home. And, you know, of course, it's like a spooky mystery horror kind of thing. But it's really, I've been really thinking about this sort of separation between things. And, you know, it would be terrible to be at work and not have the sort of joy to look forward to of being home with your loved ones. You know, it might be good to be at home and not be thinking about work. Like that's a possibility, but how many of us really do actually separate? Like you never separate. It's so tied together. And so it's a really interesting show because of that.
So now I have to watch it because that sounds really interesting. Or take it to Pachinko because I haven't even had time for that.
It's weird. I don't necessarily know that I like it, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
Has anyone watched Abbott Elementary?
I haven't. That's definitely on my list, though.
Great educators, an education show. So good.
Love it. So, Rebecca, you also said that you like to travel. Have you gotten to travel at all since the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, so since March 2020, I mean, in 2020, we didn't go anywhere. In 2021, I guess, so we actually, I mean, we drove up to see my husband's parents in New York once. We basically didn't go anywhere until we rescheduled our trip to Paris in November 2021, because that had been postponed from 2020. It was originally the trip that we bought when I signed my contract for my first ever full-time job, which was like 6 weeks before the pandemic, actually less than that. So we went to Paris. We had a great time. Neither of us like fell in love with the city, but we really enjoyed ourselves. Then January, I went to the AHA in New Orleans, had so much fun, loved conferencing. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to Raleigh for Passover. And a couple of weeks ago, we went to New York City. My PhD gift from my husband was to see Billy Joel at Madison Square Garden, and that was really fun. I think one of the reasons I list travel on my website is because it's sort of human nature to want to collect things. And I'm definitely into like keeping track of like what states have I visited, and what countries. Before grad school, I was only well traveled within the Northeast because my mom doesn't fly.
You know, I went to Paris, but I was only there for 4 hours, I think. My mom is on the chat. Maybe she can weigh in here because we went to London. We spent like a week and a half or 2 weeks in London, which was wonderful. It was a lot of fun. And we were going to go to Paris, and it was just going to be a day trip. But the operators for the channel were about to go on strike. And so we got to Paris, and it was like, you have to turn around and leave within 4 hours, or you will be stuck in France for like, who knows, forever. So we like
Eiffel
literally.
Tower workers, the Eiffel Tower workers, sorry, Eiffel Tower workers were on strike while we were in Paris. What is with, they must have terrible labor conditions, the channel and the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah. So my experience of Paris is like running through the Louvre and then like running down the Champs-Élysées and like eating crepes really fast. Like that's my experience of Paris.
I've always wanted to go to Paris. For whatever reason, I don't even know why, because I don't think my mom's ever flown. My parents didn't travel. I think my dad does now with wife number 3, but that's a whole different thing. Therapy on Wednesday, but I was supposed to go in 2013 because I went to London for research for my dissertation. And I met so many cool people that I was hanging out with. And one of the cool people that I met, who turned out to not be so cool, was this old guy, like 70s old guy, like giant gray hair, whatever. And he's like a former rugby player and all this stuff. And he like loves to get drunk and regale people with stories at the bar. And so it was nice because I was the only American there, so he would pay for everything. And I was like, yes. But one day he was like, hey, I have a rental place in Paris that I have to go clean out because my previous renters have left and I need to get it ready for the next renters. And I was like, oh, cool. And he's like, do you want to go? Like, I'll get you a ticket to the tunnel or whatever. And I was like, sure. Yeah, that sounds great. And I told my friend Claire about it. And she was like, absolutely not. Do not do it. And I was like, what? She was like, oh no. He may be 70s. That's not stopping him. And I was like, oh shit.
So you could have been a Parisian mistress?
I could have been. I don't know how I would have lived with myself afterwards, but you know what? So I didn't go, but I did finally get to go in 2017. And this time I got to go with Kyle though. So it was nice. And we spent many nights on the lawn of the Eiffel Tower watching the light show, drinking copious amounts of Parisian wine, and it was delightful.
I got to go to Paris for 2 days. I took a year off after my first year of college and spent fabulous years in nanny to a family with triplets and an older child. They were in elementary school. So I was there for the morning and afternoons and one day every weekend. And that summer they wanted to take them on their first international trip. So we stayed at the hotel in Versailles where they put up the World War I delegations for the peace conference. And the parents had a suite on the far end of the roof. And the parents went out that night for dinner with friends. The kids went to bed. I sat on the terrace looking at the lights of Versailles. It was one of the coolest things ever. And then we spent like just a day mucking around Paris and the palace, and then drove up to Normandy where the children ruined a 16th century tapestry, I think, on my day off. So thank goodness. They're not all grown up and very well adjusted and doing amazing things. But I would love to go back and spend more time. It just seems like such a cool place.
We did go to Normandy one day because my husband's a ranger, and Pointe du Hoc is like, or he, that is like the Ranger Landing. That's where they were. And I had never been to France. I had never looked up the various cities / regions / whatever of France. And neither had my husband. Like, that was not his thing. And so we were like, oh, we'll just plug Normandy into the GPS and go. We ended up in the middle of a cow field because apparently we thought Normandy was a city. I was like, how do I have a PhD? How do I have a PhD? And I thought Normandy was a city. No, it's a region. It is a region.
I didn't know that until right now.
Thank God. Thank God, because I was sitting in the car and I was like, what?
I mean, I know that's where D-Day was. I know they have beaches, right? Beaches of Normandy. I thought right now you meant, oh, it's not a city, it's like a beach town.
That's what I thought. I thought like it was just this, seaside town and we would just plug Normandy in and we, generally find our way. Well, we found our way into some Frenchman's farm. It was beautiful.
That sounds like a good way to see France, I think.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair though, we were in a sports car and not made for farm roads. So also Kyle got many tickets during that trip because Paris, France.
Tickets in France because the cars that we saw were driving in all of the directions. It was amazing. There was no rhyme or reason to the traffic patterns in Paris.
No, well, so this was on the highway. Yeah, no, it's crazy. But this was on the highway and they don't have, it's not like America where the cops sit on the side of the road just waiting to get you, They just have cameras every so often and they see you speeding, gotcha. And so I got like 6 things in the mail from the French government and I was like, first of all, I can't read these very well. I got the gist of it because, but I was like, I don't, Kyle. Leadfoot.
In Chicago, we have red light cameras. We don't have speeding cameras, but we have red light cameras. So
we have those too. I don't think they work very well though.
They're not good. Tanya, I believe that you are making a trip to Chicago.
I am. I can't wait. I have beyond 20th century, many historical interests, including Tudor England. So when I heard about Styx, which students told me about for about 2 years before the pandemic, they're like, oh, you would love Styx, Dr. Roth. I'm like, okay, fine. I finally listened to it, and then I was like, oh, my son would love Styx. So my son sings lyrics he does not understand. But like he can dance and he can sing, and so he's obsessed with Styx. And we got his cousin who's also the same age, obsessed with Styx, and we're doing for their birthdays going up to Chicago because I live 6 hours from Chicago and my niece lives 3 hours from Chicago. So we're doing a weekend in Chicago and staying in the city and everything, and I cannot wait. I have not been to a theater since 2019, I think. 2019 we hit New York City and that was amazing. So I miss traveling. I can't. Chicago's like Chicago's really the first trip I've taken since right before the pandemic. So
it was. So I live within the city borders of Chicago, and it had still been between like March 2020 and probably a full year later, that we hadn't been downtown, which is like we go downtown many times a month normally. And so right. it was weird. It was like rediscovering my own city. But yes, 6 in Chicago is amazing.
What state are you in, Kelly?
So in Illinois.
Oh, okay. So you're Chicago based?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Although I am from Ohio, which is where our chatters in the chat are both in. But yes, have lived in Chicago for a very long time. Yeah. But yes, Tanya, you're gonna love it. And going back to theater, yes, it's amazing. Like I know the pandemic's not actually over, and I know a lot of people with COVID right now, but going back to the theater makes it feel like the pandemic is over. And the theaters in Chicago are very good about making sure everyone's vaccinated, and at least right now they're still wearing masks, even though the rest of the city isn't.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I also love you mentioned your son singing lyrics he doesn't understand. I wish I could go back to those days because I listened to lyrics today and I'm just like, why? First of all, how did you string those words together? But second of all, why? When I was a kid, I was 3rd grade, 4th grade, and Spice Girls.
Oh yeah.
Popular. Do you guys know the Spice Girls song "Two Become One"?
I remember that one.
My friends
I don't
and
know the lyrics, I remember it.
My friends and I had a sleepover at my best friend Ashley's house, and her mom decided, we decided we wanted to sing and dance, and her mom was like, I'm gonna record it. And so we put on Spice Girls 2 Become One, and we're just singing and dancing. And I was Baby Spice at the time because I used to be blonde. And later, I was like, oh, wow. Why did Ashley's mom let us do this? Why did she record it for posterity? Terrible.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I don't know, words, I'm actually wondering, so Tanya, like a thing at my institution of employment is, I think the way that I know that my students respect me is when they are so apologetic for cursing.
Yes.
It's literally so freaking sweet. They know that they're not supposed to in front of educators, in front of adults. And so they swear in their daily life, which I actually didn't in high school, but like, and then sometimes they do in front of us and they're like so embarrassed. And I think that it's like the greatest show of respect that they wish they did.
I would be apologizing to you all the time.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I found creative ways to mimic curse words, because so that old stereotype, curse like a sailor, my dad was in the Navy. You do the math. And I remember at one point, like I used to use the word frickin' a lot, like, or friggin', and my mom would get so mad. And at one point she was like, why are you using such language? And I was like, I don't know. Why do you and dad use such language? And she was like, dish soap. Yeah. But after high school, downhill.
Tanya, do your students do the same thing where they apologize for it?
Oh yeah, no, the catch is something like, so sorry, I'm like, whatever, keep going. I don't say that. Like, there's a few, like a couple of them, like, you're okay, but yeah, most of the time, like, yeah, I heard that one.
My now 10-year-old learned the word fuck at school. I think it was like one of his friends had an older sibling or something. And so he came home one day and was like, so what does it mean? I know it's a bad word that I'm not supposed to say, but what does it mean? And so we're trying to sort of talk around and, we're like, okay, look, just don't say it at school. Okay. He was 7 or 8 at the time. We're like, just don't say it at school. And so the next day I get a call from the principal and I was like, oh, I told him not to say it at school. And apparently he also at the principal's office was just like, I just want to know what it means. Can you just tell me what it means? Which is very Teddy all over.
I love it. He's adorable. I remember being like such a brat when I was a kid, in the sense of like, my mom telling me like, you can't say those words, they're bad words. And so like, I went into this like lengthy tirade about how we make meaning and words change over time, and you take whatever meaning you want from that word. And she was like, all right, smart ass.
I'm picturing Mom. So baby Jamie was like, words are a fucking social construct.
Yes, I was. I was that kid.
I love it.
And still somehow I was the best of the three of us.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So.
Would they endorse that statement?
Well, my youngest brother would probably endorse that sentiment, but my middle brother would probably fight me. He'd lose though. I'm the oldest, so.
Your dog agrees.
Yeah. So Jamie, I think it's time for your favorite segment.
Oh goodness. Are we? We're at that time already. All right. So you guys are hopefully familiar with the way this works, but we like to end every episode with recommendations for the audience. And they can be anything. It could be your favorite book, your favorite artist, like the best meal you've had in the last 6 months. I don't know, like be creative. Just find something that like you just think is amazing and everybody should know about it. It's a lot of pressure right now. And you don't have to limit it to one. If you have like multiple ideas, like you can give multiples. It's totally cool.
I can look at my Goodreads account and go with the best books that I've read this year.
Love it.
And I realized, so like I listen to Uncorked History on my commute. I've never gotten to the segment because my commute is slightly shorter than the length. So like, I mean, I just realized now I'm going to have to go backtrack and collect all of the recommendations. So there are of the like 45 books I've read so far this year, 4 of them were just incredible. The first was The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood, which is a rom-com that gets academia right. And I was not expecting it to be so good, but it really was. Anyone who wants like rom-com chick lit that takes place in academia, Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. The second one is How to Be Authentic, Simone de Beauvoir and the Quest for Fulfillment by Skye Cleary. That one comes out in August, and I got to review it for the LA Review of Books. I was so excited about that. I'm still paranoid that my review will get like canceled or something, because things like that have happened to me before. But that book was really good. It sits at the intersection of philosophy, self-help, and biography, because Simone de Beauvoir. The third out of 4 is A Novel Obsession by Caitlin Barasch. I'm not sure how to say her last name, but A Novel Obsession is like it's contemporary fiction that takes place in New York City with the publishing industry. And basically this girl is stalking, if you don't like stalking stories, then you wouldn't like Novel Obsession, but she's stalking her boyfriend's ex who works in publishing, because she's trying to like write her first novel about the boyfriend and the ex. And I really enjoyed that one. And then last but not least, Before and After the Book Deal by Courtney Maum. It's a how-to book. It was recommended to me by someone on Twitter, and then I read it and I'm like, this is the funniest thing. Like, it's just so funny. Like, even the table of contents was like how to not crawl in a hole and die. Like, it kept it so real. So those are my 4 favorite books that I've read so far this year.
Love that. I have been obsessed with 2 books in the last year. I've read a lot of good stuff this year, but nothing that really stands out this year. But Anthony Doerr's Cloud Cuckoo Land, I got from our library and held on to it for like 3 weeks, because faculty can have books the entire year, and that's amazing. And I do kind of milk that. I was like, this can't be as good as All the Light We Cannot See, which I had not read in years. And I was like, oh, I was also in this, like, it's a male author, I read all sorts of authors, right? But I was like, I've been reading all these female authors and I don't know how this is going to be, what's it going to be about. And the title kind of reminded me of something else. But Cloud Cuckoo Land just took me away. So I was obsessed with that. I read Pachinko around the same time for the first time, and I love Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. And I've only watched the first episode of it on Apple TV, but oh my God, it's gorgeous. One of the other things I've fallen into since starting my job is that one of my other hobbies, frankly, is East Asian history. I fell into that as something extra. So like Pachinko was just amazing, and the show of it is incredibly done and so well told and just beautiful to look at, and you have to watch it with subtitles. Which then reminds me of the Netflix series. Hold on, I have to do this right. It's been a couple years. What? Yes, Dark. Did any of you watch Dark, the German TV show on Netflix? Oh my gosh, this show was amazing. It ran like 2 or 3 seasons on Netflix. Watch it in German with the subtitles. Don't dub it. But like, so those are my obsessions. Also, Inventing Anna, which I think I'm going to write something about I finished spring break doing a pitch for Nursing Cleo, and they're like, yes, please write it. So I haven't read it yet, but that's coming. So Inventing Anna was one that surprised me. I was like, yeah, I like this one. So yeah, they're kind of all over the place, but there we go. That's me. It's all over the place. It's whatever feels good at the moment.
Thanks for recommending Pachinko, because I've had that for a while and I haven't read it yet. I'll definitely prioritize Pachinko.
Beautiful. It's beautiful.
So I like subtitles when things are in English, and I have trouble with subtitles watching foreign language because I knit while I watch TV. I can't just be watching TV. And so most of the knitting I do while I'm watching TV, I can do without really looking at it, but I still have to look down sometimes, you know, just to sort of make sure like yarn gets tangled or something. And so I'm miss things. So it's okay if I'm listening and reading the same thing, but if I'm trying to do something else, it's hard. So maybe I will though attempt.
Yeah. Or like watch part of one with the original language and watch the dub for the rest of it. And you'll still get it. It's still good.
Yeah. So I luckily don't have to choose the best book of all time because I do this every time we're on. So it's usually the last book I read. But I will say amusingly, I'm going to be a guest on a podcast called Best Book Ever, where you have to decide the like best book you've ever read and talk about it. And I told my husband I was going on this, and he was like, "You were able to choose a favorite book ever?" And I was like, "Well, favorite book of the last year." And the book I chose was All That She Carried by Tanya Miles, which I have recommended on here before and I love dearly. So that's going to be fun to do. But that's not what I'm recommending tonight because I've recommended that before. So the book I am recommending tonight is called The Department of Rare Books and Special Collections. It's a novel. I don't know how to say the author's name. I think it's Eva Jurczyk. But it's a mystery novel set in a library special collections. It's got kind of mixed reviews on like Amazon and Goodreads, but I really liked it. I like all mystery novels anyway. And I thought it was really fun. And, you know, it's got some, it's like academia adjacent because it's an academic library at a university. And so there's all kinds of like politics going on with donors and university presidents, stuff like that. So I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
I literally just got that from the library today. Just saying.
Totally synced, ready to go. I love it. All right, so I have 3 random recommendations because I, like Tanya, am all over the place. First, I have been listening to the audiobook Poirot Investigates by Agatha Christie. This is narrated by Richard Armitage, I think. Yes, Richard Armitage. And basically, Poirot Investigates is not told from Hercule Poirot's perspective. It's actually Captain Hastings' perspective. So it's a really interesting like dive into the Poirot mysteries if you're really into that. I absolutely love it. And oh yeah, Brad, he was Thorin in The Hobbit. Love his voice. It's amazing. I tried to put it on to go to sleep. Couldn't do it because I was just like captivated by his voice. Second, I just watched 1 episode. I'm getting there, but I will recommend Our Flag Means Death, which is on HBO Max, I believe.
I wanted to know if you'd seen it because I read the little synopsis about it and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to know if Jamie's seen this.
I know, everybody sent it to me and I was like, it's on my list.
My 11th grade advisees are obsessed with that show, and I told them that I had a friend who's a scholar of pirates. I am so excited to know what you think of the show to tell them.
Oh yeah, no, we should talk because I've only seen the first episode, but I do know a lot about it. I've seen lots of like clips and read a lot about it. It was funny because I went to Cincinnati recently. I was doing the keynote, sounds all fancy, but at the Queen City Colloquium, which is the grad student history conference at the University of Cincinnati. And Reese, who is the grad student who picked me up, she was like, have you seen this yet? And I hadn't yet. And she was like, oh, it's about Stede Bonnet. And I was like, yeah. And so I told her, you know, about Stede Bonnet because he's my favorite pirate. And I was like, he, you know, had a midlife crisis, sold his very wealthy business in Barbados, ditched his wife and kids, bought a boat, hired a pirate crew, hooked up with Blackbeard at one point, but he was terrible. And she was like, oh shit, that's real? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, oh, I thought the show made it up. And I was like, at that moment, I was like, I have to watch this now. I have to watch this now. So I started it. Thyroid TV is like
saying it was your favorite, that he was your favorite. Because when I read the little synopsis, I was like, wait, where do I know this name? And I was like, I remember we asked Jamie who her favorite pirate was when we did the episode on pirates.
Yes. So I will recommend that. I haven't even finished it yet, but I will recommend it because there's, not only is it about Stede Bonnet and Blackbeard, but the characters are so fun. It is hilarious. There's a lot of, queer pirates happening, and I just adore that. It's like, it's just part of the story. Like, it's not like in your face, like, but it's great. So I can't wait to finish it. And my third recommendation, I don't know if anybody has heard of Rachel Hollis and Dave Hollis.
Oh my God, the maintenance pod's takedown of them. Is that where you're going with that?
No, but send it to me. I've got to listen to it.
So there's a whole genre of takedowns of Rachel Hollis on podcasts. The maintenance pod by Aubrey Gordon, who wrote What We Talk About When We Talk About Fat. They did an amazing takedown of Rachel Hollis. And then the other one is Be There in 5 by Kate Kennedy. Sorry, big aficionado of the Rachel Hollis takedowns.
Send them to me. I dove into
momentarily, Jamie.
Yeah. I dove into a deep hole the other night. It was 4:30 in the morning when I realized, oh shit, I should probably go to sleep. But I say this because when I was first made aware of Rachel Hollis, I was like, oh, she's like uplifting and she's got this great message. And I was like, oh, I'm going to read her book. And then as I got through,
I read them.
Yeah, I read her books. I was like, oh, this is some white privilege bullshit. And so I just, she's had so many scandals now. And it just brought to mind, like, there is this culture. So we have influencers, right? The social media is filled with influencers of all kind. But what I find to be kind of the most dangerous of the influencers, aside from the very crazy extreme fitness influencers, are those who propagate the idea that they're trying to help you when really they're just trying to get you to buy their shit. Because the thing is, like, Rachel Hollis has no background in mental health. Like, she's promoting herself as this like wellness expert and like all this stuff. So anyways, the recommendation, if you want to learn more about the scandals and about like the fall from grace and why it's all bullshit, Reddit has a thing. I'm not on Reddit a lot, so I don't know what it's called, but channel, whatever, is called Hollis Uncensored, I believe. Yes, Hollis Uncensored. And basically what it is a discussion forum of Rachel and Dave Hollis, Heidi Powell, Dave Hollis's new girlfriend, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, it's just like they have weekly snark posts. They have like they link you to other like shit posting stuff, which is fun. That's how I found out about Kaya's World on YouTube. She does this great like live stream review of stuff, including the Rachel Hollis YouTube videos. So just fantastic, especially if you want to feel better about yourself. Like,
I looked these up for you, Jamie, and I forgot an important detail, which is that the Kate Kennedy Be There in 5 really insightful takedown of Rachel Hollis is 3 2-hour episodes. So you have 6 hours ahead of you.
Oh, I am so down. I am so down.
And then the maintenance pod has 2 parts, which are normal podcast length, an hour or less each. But I mean, I'm jealous that you got to listen to all this for the first time, because for those who share our sentiment, which I'm biased, but I think is the right sentiment, that she's like super culty, like in like a white capitalist way. It's like they're like really insightful. Like it's poignant.
Yes. I can't wait. I don't like to tear people down, but sometimes you got to tear a bitch down.
She's fine. She has millions of followers and a lot of money.
I was gonna say she has so much money. I don't think she knows what to do with it. So.
And she compared herself to Harriet Tubman on TikTok, and you deserve to be taken down for that.
Yes. Also known as Toilet Gate, because it all started with her post about how she was thankful for the woman who cleans her toilets. And then she started comparing her. She was like, you think I want to be relatable? And then she started talking about how she was like Maya Angelou and Harriet Tubman and all these Malala, you know, like all these influential people.
We could do our own takedown.
Yeah.
Rachel Hollis.
We'll have a bonus episode of Uncorked History where we just take down this industry of like self-help influencers.
Take
We'll
notes
put them all
on
in there,
hours.
from Tony Robbins, like Dave Ramsey, like we'll just put them all in there. Sorry to anybody who likes those people.
Well, on that uplifting note,
I had to go there. Bothered me so much.
Yeah, but I read them too. I read those books. I bought them at Target. Rachel Hollis's favorite place is Target.
I did too. Shameful.
well, you've gotten there eventually, so.
That is fair.
All right. Well, this was really fun. My kids have to go to bed soon, so we're going to have to wrap it up. But this was super fun, and I am so glad, Rebecca and Tanya, that you were able to join us and be snarky with us.
You guys are amazing.
This is what I
Yeah,
needed.
thank you so much.
I love it.